Good morning. Happy Friday. I'm here with one of my most dearest friends, Stephanie Pearce. We met in Hawaii a couple years ago, and she is just a beautiful, loving soul, just so healing. And we are going to talk about self-worth and increasing self-worth. And we're going to kind of just dig into using Stephanie's story and her journey to kind of paint a picture of what's possible coming from childhood trauma and to where she is now. And we're just going to kind of dig in and see what kind of golden nuggets we can discover. And yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. It's so good to see your face.
It's good to see yours.
And yeah, give us before we dig into the meat, let's give everyone just like a quick little intro on like what kind of coaching, healing stuff that you do in your world.
Okay. Currently, I work with teenage boys in rehab, or a residential treatment center. I introduce yoga nidra to them, so that's been a really interesting experience.
Wow.
To see the majority of these boys diagnosed with ADHD, extreme cases of it, and 16 of them like going into complete silence or stillness. That's probably the most rewarding part of my week. Then to go farther, the boys actually have expressed interest. Hey, can I lead one of these meditations? And I was like, what? Oh my gosh,
that's amazing.
So I'll like sit with them, and these are ages 13 to 18. So I sit with them and I'm like, okay, there's a formula and you can create your own. So they've inspired me to actually create my own meditations, not just read from these amazing texts and teachers that I've had along the way. And to create their own, I'm like, oh yeah, you expanded me. Like they're my teachers as well.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
With them, I also help create this plan and transition, like what comes next. And it's so cool. Like we start off my journey with them in their latter part of their stay in treatment. And we do like this goals and strengths, like trying to talk about like, what are your skills? What are your needs to achieve your goals and to get them forward thinking. And from ages 13 to 15, like goal setting and long-term thinking is so new to them. So it's a really cool time to like see that start and push their limits on that. Let's see what else about them. So, and working with the parents is like a totally different dynamic than the boys that I work with and see day to day. So that's been that part. On the other side, I've had yoga always throughout the last almost 10 years. And I've started with basically like hot yoga, the basic Bikram, and then I transitioned into vinyasa, where I loved feeling like I was dancing and it was amazing, just breathing. And then I transitioned into the more subtle, sweet parts. So restorative yoga, where it was more stillness. And then to go further, yoga nidra is what transformed my life a lot. Yoga nidra and the meditation, if you haven't heard of it before, it's wakefulness or sleep wakefulness. And it's such a powerful way to induce this stillness. And it takes your thoughts from like 20 things at a time to like just the one, like 20,000 thoughts in a day to just one at a time. And it's so beautiful. So and that's powerful. Where I was like, I'm just going to try to introduce this to teenagers and see how it goes. And the results have been amazing.
And also a quick plug, Stephanie will be leading us in Yoga Nidra in the Me First Self-Care group on Sunday, June 14th. Right. I think it's 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be amazing.
And that will be my own script to help all of those who are like self-care leaders and proponents or advocates. So let's see, to bridge that over, I am going back to grad school to now study social work. So that's the next step. It's scary to go back, but it's also, I know I need the letters next to my name.
Yeah.
And it's necessary. So that's it from my background. I guess massage therapy because that's how I met you.
You're one of the most incredible massage therapists I've ever experienced. Like, just so healing, so intuitive. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So talking about self-worth, it's so core and fundamental to all of our work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such the root of like this worthiness, which is when you feel worthy, you feel deserving of, right? So
Yes.
Deserving of love, deserving of fulfillment and joy and all the good things that we want in our lives, right? If we don't feel worthy or deserving of those things, we won't put ourselves in the position to have them, right? We won't take action towards those things. And I think that as coaches and healers and leaders, like there is such a tendency to overgive and to not have firm boundaries and to just serve and serve and serve. And I think so much of that comes down to this these unconscious beliefs that we're not worthy, or our value is based on how much we do for others.
Yes.
And I think it's so important to really tune back in and look inside first and say, like, how can I clean up my side of the street? And how can I truly cultivate this self-compassion and this love for myself first? Mm-hmm. And I'm so in awe of your story and your journey, and how far you've come. Like, it just, like, honestly, like, makes me want to cry. Like, it's so beautiful to see how far you've come and to know where you've come from. And so, I would love for you to share your story with us, kind of however feels natural to you to kind of start. And
well, first I have to start with like an agreement to your points on self-worth. And the biggest point I've learned, or message for self-worth, is it's not to put pressure or any investment on external people outside of you or things outside of you that define your worth. And that was a big message. I was like, oh, wow, I started doing an audit. And I was like, what are all the things that to me say I'm worthy or I'm not? And it was a lot. It was a laundry list of things that,
like how are we giving our power away?
Yeah. And one of those, I can mention a few of them, like being in debt or money. I was like, absolutely. Like if I don't make a certain amount, or if I have debt, then I am not worthy, right? Or relationships, for sure, obviously. Like, I'm a recovering codependent. I think all of us have been or are at one point in our lives, all of us. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, based on the success of this relationship, I am worthy. Based on their happiness and our connection, like, I am so worthy. Like, and even the relationship status being one, like, that's worthy. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not in one, then I'm not worthy.
Right.
Or it's low. And then let's see, the other one, those were probably the two biggest. It'd be those two. And then it started going into work, because I am also a workaholic. So I have codependency and workaholic. And because I get that gratification, the more I get done, the more I can show, like, you can't lose me. Like, I invest in me because I got so much done. Or
we have a lot of overachievers and perfectionists in this group, for sure.
And I don't need to burn myself out to prove I'm worthy. Like, because I'm worthy, I'm not going to burn myself out. Mm-hmm. I won't get to that point and leave feeling completely drained. Yeah. And that's hard. It takes practice. It takes a lot of tools, which I'm so happy there's so many out there available to us. It's just kind of knowing where they are and how to start and jumping into it, jumping off that cliff. Which leads me to some work that I found. One of my other dear friends, she was like, Steph, have you heard of this podcast before? And I was like, what is this podcast? And I just kind of read an overview of it, and I was like, to be magnetic, what does that mean? And so it's called TBM. And I guess she actually started with an online business One book she recommends is like the $100 Startup. I forget the author's name, but that's one that she recommends to any entrepreneur, online business, etc. And she just started with a blog, and then she started going into podcast and coaching. And then she found a very specific way to coach and to reprogram our consciousness or subconsciousness. Because going back to that point where, how do we know that there's more worth if we've never seen it before? You know, like you need people that expand. You need situations that expand your subconscious to know that that's available, that that's something that could actually happen. So in my case, like I need females and entrepreneurs. I need social workers. I need people maybe farther down that road than where I am. So I'm expanded.
Absolutely.
And it's not to feel less than.
Yeah, that's so important, because it's like if you've grown up in your bubble and this is what you've always experienced, like this level of worthiness or whatever, how can you even imagine what might be available to you if this is all that you've experienced and all that you've witnessed?
Absolutely. And what we've experienced and witnessed in the past could be probably not the best for us. And my experiences and what I witnessed in the past, there are some pretty damaging things to my worth. So I grew up the youngest of 7. This might bring up some tears. So I started this interview today without thinking, oh, I won't like talk about myself. I'll talk about the work I do. And I was like, oh, yep, I need to talk about myself and my journey. I think these are some of the most powerful stories and also expand me. It makes me think, wow, like I'm listening to this female's or male perspective and I relate to this, and that they're coming forward and sharing their story, like that expands me. Like maybe I'll do that one day. So this is already happening. Like this is something I manifested like months ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, youngest of 7 kids, grew up in a very religious upbringing. And it was very, it's all suppression and it's all guilt and shame to get us to do the right thing, quote unquote, the right thing. And like unfortunately, one of my siblings, when I was about 4 or 5, approached me in a non-appropriate way sexually and molested me. And that really shook me to my core and rocked my world. I didn't know what happened. I was way too young. Later in life, that's not even what really truly did the most damage. It was when I was at like 7 and I presented to my dad, and I'm like, in such a way that was absolutely like the non-graceful. It had no tact, but I was also 7 years old. So how do you expect a 7-year-old to do that?
You did. I'm sure you did the best you could with how old you were and what you had and the emotion behind it, right? That you were bringing.
Oh, it was out of spite. I was like, well, yeah, my brother and this and this and this. And he was like, go to your room. You're done with dinner. Like, see you later. And I went to my room and he came upstairs, and I may have gotten a belt, like a little spanking, because that's what he knew. That was his best at the time, and didn't address it, didn't talk to my mom about it ever again. So that's what did the most damage. And then it affected my relationships with parents. I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. So I was silent. I was so scared of public speaking.
Oh God, yeah.
So yeah, I just...
Well, yeah, I mean, like you have this experience where you are sharing this trauma with your dad, which is scary in the first place.
Yeah.
And then to not be acknowledged and to not be heard or seen or empathized with, which has created this belief that my voice doesn't matter and my needs don't matter, right?
Yep. All of the above.
Yeah.
I think what challenged that belief that I had for 20 years was teaching yoga. So I was in a teacher training, and I can like still remember it, like the people, the smells, the room, everything. And I was sitting in the middle, and I had to like demonstrate boat pose, which is, it's a pretty like challenging pose, and no one could hear me, and I couldn't speak louder than what I was giving, and I didn't know what to say. I was getting choked up on my words, and they ended it, and they're like, okay, let's practice teaching. Like, she's struggling, and I'm tempted to leave the room, my mentor stopped me in my tracks and says, "What's wrong?" I said, "I can't do this. Like, this is not for me. I can't teach.
Too
I don't know
hard.
why I'm here. This is so hard." And then she looked at me and I'm just bawling, sobbing tears. And she goes, "This is why you're here. It's this moment. Who cares about boat pose? Who cares about what you say? But it's how it's affecting you and how much worth you're feeling or investing in just that pose and teaching." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." So from that moment on, I was determined, and I started making like friendships that would last forever. I started just transforming right in front of people's eyes, to the point that I graduated the program. And to the best, like I still had my reservations, and everyone was like, "Yeah, you got the most transformation award for this, for sure, out of like the 23 people." And so that was validating. And then I did start to shift into that codependency of, okay, if I have a great yoga class, then I'm a good yoga teacher. So that was one that I had to unblock, and I'm still working on that to this day. Like, I'll have my moments. I'm like, that was really great. And then one person I like pick up because I'm so empathetic and intuitive. I'm like, I don't know if they were jiving with that. Like, it's still not measuring my worth, and I have to remind myself of that. So yeah, then relationships in my 20s, like I got through a divorce, and that was just earth shaking. And I did get married in a religious setting. I realized that wasn't good once my partner was like, I don't believe in this. And it was like the rug got slipped from under me, and I used all the shame and guilt on him to get him to do what I want, what he signed up for and promised, and what I expected. And I was like, I left that feeling, okay, if I loved this man, if I truly did, and if I love myself, like, why would I use all the guilt and shame, and why would I accept it from other people in the past? So I needed to unlearn that behavior too. So I quickly got through that one. It was good. The guilt and shame part has been a good transformation for me.
Yeah.
I moved to Hawaii and wanted to start a healing journey away from family, away from the religion, and see how it goes. Like, how can I interact in an environment where I did have these very strong enforced values and beliefs, to then find my own and question my own. And it was definitely like trial and error. And, I wasn't crazy or anything, but I definitely like did some things and experimented, and just, I kind of found my own values, my own core. And that was to be as authentic and as honest as possible, and to apologize if I did it in a way that wasn't graceful, and to leave things better than when I came. Always, that's one of my big ones. And yeah, I think to keep working, like, do the work for myself. So this work that I found, the magnetic stuff, the to be magnetic, just tying into that. Sorry, like totally big segue to the next thing.
No, this is great. Like, it's so amazing to see how, like, you have done the work. Like, you have shown up for yourself when you didn't know how. Like, there was no pathway in front of you. Like, you weren't like, oh, I'm going to get from here to there, and this is how I'm going to get there. It's like, it's messy and it's painful, and it's like, you have to take so much responsibility for how you're showing up, and how you can be better, and how you can claim your power back, right? Like, in all of these things. And it's so beautiful to see how you went from this extremely traumatic childhood, and like really intense like upbringing, and then how you started breaking out and being courageous and like claiming your life for yourself. And it's, I think a lot of people can resonate with that, and like how there is no set path, and like it's going to be different for everyone, but it's tuning into what you need, and doing that thing, like having the courage to do the thing that you know you need to do.
Absolutely. And I think I've flexed that muscle, that courage, that trust muscle a lot.
Yeah, you have.
There's still anxiety around, like, Oh, I know I can flex it, but
You're good.
oh, sorry. I said I know I can flex it, but like, how do I like, can I do it? Like, I know I can flex, but do I want to? Or I go through that little cycle, and then I just kind of find all those tools that really work for me and shift my perspective, talk to friends, do journaling prompts, do meditations that are geared to that specifically. And I think I can do it pretty gracefully. I
Yeah.
can get through it. Um,
So tell me about this. You were talking about the to be magnetic and like this, you were talking about the daily reprogramming.
yep, daily reprogramming
Yeah.
exercises. So there's journal prompts, and then there are these meditations that geared towards, I had to go into inner child and inner shadow. So child is like going back to those traumatic events that I mentioned earlier, and you walk yourself through the images. It's guided the whole time. Your eyes are closed. You picture that child and you feel what they needed, and then you present the most authentic self. And that's not necessarily who you are today. It's like who you aim to be, who you picture is the most authentic version of you is.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back to that place and you give that child, yourself, what you need. Another option is to also present the parent. The parent goes back, and they are their most authentic version of themselves, and they come to you and give you exactly what you need, that safety or comfort or whatever that felt like was lacking in the moment. Or you can come back as who you currently are and do the same thing for that child in the moment. And that's been powerful to face it head on. And I think I missed some details from my memories that were presented in the daily reprogramming. The goal is to reprogram your memory in a sense that, okay, that was your limiting belief. We know when it happened. We saw what happened. So if we just try to reframe your subconscious or go back to that, can we change it? Neuroplasticity, and then present like a future version of yourself that you did the work and that you can move forward. So in the hypnotic state, it does get you into like a deeper state of consciousness, and it's like your theta mind, and it really helps because I'm so okay with yoga nidra, and I'm not scared of that hypnotic state or theta state. So that's why I was drawn to the daily reprogramming, because I'm like, I get this. This is something I've been doing already and love, but it's so catered to going back to my past and reprogramming.
So what has been the impact on you since you've been doing this work, especially around this traumatic event that has so affected your worthiness, right? Your sense of worthiness. What has been the impact on you from when you started to now?
That's a really good question. I think it's subtle, but it shows up in ways where I can say no more easily. I have these, I'm able to deliver a boundary. And I think it does get easier when I do catch myself in low self-worth or I'm not being very authentic, that I can then listen to it. Like there's little pings, little moments that I'm like, oh, this is like a little test. This is a moment that I'm really being pushed to, do I need to go back and do more work? And then what I've manifested from it is just healthier people showing up in my life. And then to walk away from things that aren't healthy. That's been the best of all.
Yeah.
Because I haven't put worth on others or things anymore or as much. And it's amazing to be able to separate myself from relationships that don't serve me a lot easier. It's been fabulous.
I mean, it's everything, right? Like you are who you surround yourself with. And if you look at this, right, if I know that I deserve to be loved and treated well, and I feel safe enough to lay a boundary, then you start calling in these relationships that truly support you. And from there, that just ripples out into every other aspect of your life, right? Like your sense of joy and ease and fulfillment, and like that balance, right? Like if we're able to say no and we're able to have boundaries, we're able to say, you know what, actually, like I'm depleted and I need a break. Or actually, this opportunity or this relationship is not resonating with me. And I feel safe enough to say no, like this is not for me. And you preserve your energy and your vitality, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's
Because
just
you're
so
not
important.
forcing it. You're not forcing yourself into a situation that isn't authentic anymore. And being self-help or self-care workers and what, not self-help or positive psychology, but just being the industry and the workers that we are, that's important because we're constantly giving to others that we have to give to ourselves in a way, again, that doesn't leave us depleted, because we're so prone to being depleted because we're helping so much. And those boundaries got to start with us first. And I think they can carry on through our professional relationships and what we call in, what we can say no to. If we're in fear of money and we're like, how are we going to get that? Do I want to take on this client? Do I want to do this next thing and say yes to this like podcast or whatever it could be? And I think you'll be more in your path and your journey, your authentic code of sorts to keep going where you need to be. You can say no easier. There's a lot less fear around it. So
yeah, I think it's like, I mean, I personally believe that this like self-love and worthiness is the most important work that we can do for ourselves because it is such a ripple into everything else. Mm-hmm. And to tie it into like the broader perspective of everything going on in the world right now, like all of these things that are being highlighted with coronavirus and racial injustice and like all of this stuff. It's like people like us, like people who hold space for others and help champion change and bring new perspectives. It is so important for us to take care of ourselves and to have boundaries around how much energy we're giving out because we have so much important work to do.
Yeah.
Like there's so like we have to keep showing up like this. Like I keep getting this metaphor of like, this is a marathon. Like we have so far to go and we are the people that help hold space for change. And it's just so important to take care of yourself.
And one thing I feel called to like mention is change has to start with you before you expect anything else to change. Like
100%.
It's you, all you. It's a big responsibility, but it's a really important one.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's like everything from how you show up in a relationship, right? Like when you see yourself blaming someone else, what part are you taking in this relationship? Like it's so easy to put blame on someone else or an external circumstance or whatever, but it's like, how can I take responsibility for my part in this energy exchange or this interaction or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm a big advocate of like opposites. So there's blame and then there's also love too. So you're putting so much responsibility on someone else, like all that love, but how are you loving yourself too? You know, Does that make sense? Like not just blame and shame, but all the good stuff too. Like you got to put that responsibility on you too.
Yes.
How are you loving? How are you showing up?
I love that.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I think this feels like a good time to wrap up. Thank you guys for hi words. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and please join us for Yoga Nidra on June 14th with Stephanie. She's going to lead us in a really beautiful restorative practice, and please reach out to us if you guys are needing support on your journey. And I hope you have an amazing weekend, and please take care of yourselves. There's a lot going on right now, and we need you taking care of yourself so that we can keep showing up for others. So thank you so much, Steph. I appreciate you and your time and your beautiful energy.
Thank you, Savannah. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day, guys.
Bye, guys.